I'm going to play this skeptic here because my new theme that I'm thinking through is unmoralize everything. That moralism, moral judgment, as I said, it's just it makes it difficult to find the truth. And
this is a difficult thought because intuitively and emotionally, I want to completely jump on board what Haidt's saying. I want to unmoralize everything. I want to be cold, hard, look at the facts and data. We're all going to be Vulcans. Okay. But then you hear what Pinker said. He's like, how people are almost creating cults around TED Talks based around clearing parasites out of water. And on one hand, I think that's silly, and I wish people didn't do that. But on the other hand, I think, wait a minute. If people didn't do that, they wouldn't be motivated to go and do those changes in the world.
Yeah.
And so this idea about like, I want to remove the moralization from everything, I agree with it conceptually, but then I think that removes like 99% of people's motivation to do anything, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's so crazy because so much of that comes back to what are you motivating people to do? Are you motivating them to, surreptitiously get critical race theory into every single grade school classroom? Like, what are you motivating them to do, right?
Right, but that's the thing. I think moralization is one of the primary motivators of behavior.
No, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So to remove it from a topic, while that might make you think of the topic more clear, I don't think people are going to be excited to necessarily do whatever the quote positive change is that you want then.
But there are certain vocations that I think moral, you have to take the moralization out of journalism, science.
Oh, no, I agree. Yes, I agree. Complete 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the workaround is our workaround. Our moralization is to find what is true. Okay. That's the motivating moralization for us.
It's a different, and it's Haidt doesn't even define it as a moral intuition. It's curiosity. Right. It's a completely different emotion driving science.
It's not just curiosity, because there has to be a moral weight given to the idea of looking at things objectively in the first place. That has to be a decision.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that's part of why we're so disgusted with CRT. CRT rejects that there is any morality in trying to be objective.
Don't you think curiosity drives science, though, to some extent?
No, it does. It does. But I'm saying curiosity alone isn't enough. It has to be curiosity combined with a moral principle of caring about truth and objectivity.
Yeah.
Because you can be very curious and not care about what is true, and you can go down all sorts of paths.
Sure. Yeah.
I could believe that the earth is flat and space is fake. And that will satiate my curiosity forever, because there's a million people that have a million different crazy stories about that.
Sure. Yeah. Next thing you know, you're doing a Rubik's Cube inside a pentagram.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so constructive moral and social movements, well, we're all supposed to think, well, social movements are great. And the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, gay liberation, all the incredible rights movements of the last 50 or 60 years. But that's in part because we look back at the ones that were successful and that were really deeply right about righting injustices. And now when I look at social activism on campus and among young people, I think I have a much greater appreciation for how hard it is to change institutions, especially complicated institutions that are generally trying to be open and humane anyway. And I look at the policies that many young people are pressing universities to adopt or pressing companies to adopt. And what I see happening is unmoored moralism, trying to change institutions without understanding them. And I'm beginning to think that social activism may on net be a negative thing to the extent that now it is governed more by the social dynamics of social media and self-presentation than by any real study of a problem and an attempt to come up with something that would work.
True.
So,
that's blindness, isn't it?
That is so true. Oh my God.
The book that I want Haidt to read is that pro-felicity book, because Haidt is completely freaking out about social media in a way that book just completely changed a lot of my fear calculus on social media. I don't fear social media in the same way Haidt does, and I think a lot of it has to do with that book.
Anyway, do you disagree with what he just said though? Because I don't.
No, everything he said is completely valid. Yes,
right.
I agree. Yeah,
right. And it seemed like he was sort of making the pro-felicity argument.
Yes, yeah. He's saying social activism is a form of pro-felicity. Yeah,
right. Where everyone's on the street corner trying to show how moral they are.
Yeah,
how virtuous they are.
I completely agree.
I hope maybe he'll bring this up in his capitalist book. I would actually be super curious, because he's saying that there's like a survivor's bias for social movements because we only remember the good ones.
Yeah, we don't remember alcohol prohibition.
Right, that's the only one that gets brought up because it was enshrined in law, so it's kind of hard to forget.
Yep.
But so I don't know the answer to that. There could be dozens, of social movements that were very widespread that are all fucking terrible and stupid, and we just don't talk about them or remember them because they failed or were deemed to be shitty. And I'd be curious if you stack those, what the numbers would be. Like how many of these widespread social movements are bad versus how many of them are actually good.
I love that he just comes right out and says, I think activism is probably a net loss for us.
I think social justice is a net loss right now. Yeah.
I know. It's so great.
I mean, blind blindness? What do you mean? They're blind to what they're blind about?
Yes, exactly. It's ignorance of it. Yeah. Well, if you put someone on the spot and you ask them if they could run a nuclear power plant, they'll say no. But if you ask them what should be done about the entire world's electrical grid, they'll tell you the answer. Mm-hmm. And that's a good example of not decomposing the problem down into units that could actually be addressed intelligently. But so you're noticing this activism, and you're doubtful about its utility. And your solution, and we can talk about this more, is to take the moral fervor out of it. So I was thinking recently about Jean Piaget's argument. His final stage of cognitive.
That's also impossible. I think it's literally impossible to take the moral questions out of this social activism. That's a dream.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I mean, you could start conceptualizing it more as sports, which I think would be healthier.
Sure, I guess.
I mean, sports, it's not life or death with sports. You never. I
just don't think I don't think you could convince people to ever do that.
Right. They like the fact that it's life or death. Those are the most extreme stakes, which makes it. I mean, think how much more people would be into sports if you actually killed the losing team.
Yeah, or if whichever team lost, 100 random people from that city had to be sacrificed. Then you'd care. If you're really interested in sports,
people would be super focused on it.
Yes.
Yeah. Ouch.
Hardly anybody knows this, but it was the messianic stage.
Well, I've never heard about this.
Absolutely. There's many things about Piaget that people haven't heard about. That
messianic.
His goal was to unite.
This part is so interesting. I actually went through the messianic stage. How about you, Sitch?
I don't know what the messianic stage is.
When you think that you're the Messiah, you're the actual chosen one. Oh, wait, you do that every week on the show.
I was going to say, you think I went through this? I'm there, buddy.
You're still going through it.
I'm right there,
religion
buddy.
and sense.
Oh.
Yes, Piaget is a very strange character, and all you hear about is the rational stage theory. But anyways, the last stage was the messianic, and he identified that as a stage in late adolescence. Not everyone reached it, but that it involved a world change.
Only the cool people reach it.
True.
only the egomaniacal jackasses.
Only my lords like ourselves.
I know. Which
the messianic stage.
Which I am dead serious. I was definitely that egomaniacal jackass when I was 20 years old. So
we saw you had Jesus hair.
I think you could make an argument that Vosh is actually in the messianic stage right now.
Oh, God, 100%.
Which makes it even more fascinating to think about what he's talking about. We might have to do some digging into this Piaget messianic stage.
like 95% of all political commentators are in the messianic stage.
No,
okay,
I
like
think
permanently.
So. I think so. Candace Owens, you can make an argument that she thinks she's in the messianic stage.
Tim
Trump.
Pool, they all are. Come on, let's be real.
Yeah.
Ranging fervor, and he identified that as part of what catalyzed identity. And so we're seeing that these students, they come to university, they want to catalyze their identity in a profound way and orient themselves. And what seems to happen is the activist types tap into that and offer them a solution. And the solution seems dangerous, but it doesn't look like the intelligent people are offering anything that's useful as an alternative, because they're not getting anywhere with it. And so we have to ask ourselves exactly why that is. And part of it is the lack of romance, I think. You know, when Orwell wrote about the Nazis in the 1930s, he was very careful to highlight their dramatic use of ritual and the romantic attraction. Now, of course, he was absolutely opposed to everything they were doing, as anyone rightly should be. But Orwell was very wise and about human nature in general.
That was Jordan Peterson. I wish Haidt was on the screen at the same time. That was Jordan Peterson reacting to the look on Haidt's face. Because Haidt right now is like, God, Jordan Peterson, everyone at NYU is trying to accuse me of being a Nazi. Why are you putting me in a conversation with Jordan Peterson and literally bringing up the Nazis? Like, Jordan, Sitch and I, you know, we look out for each other on the show. Like, we know what can be misconstrued and usually step in, and it's funny.
Right. But what he's saying though is a good point.
Oh, it's totally true. Yeah, of course. It's a
these
great point.
Extreme ideologies have quote unquote sexy aesthetics for certain people.
Fuck yeah. Of course.
That sucker them into following.
Yeah. It's true.
And you all want to wear your little matching uniforms and your shiny boots and, you know, parade around the square.
Yeah.
You know, chopping the heads off non-believers. It's a fun romp.
It is. It's a hell of a hangover.
There's a drama in what's being offered to adolescents that the rational approach doesn't seem to engender. And I don't know how to solve that problem. I think it's a terrible problem. But
how do we solve that problem, Sitch? I mean, it is a fascinating problem.
Well, it's interesting because it seemed like the way that problem was solved to some extent is by casting it as like, oh, conformists are like your parents. If you want to be a cool rebel, you have to be not conformist. You have to rebel. But then that just leads to the pendulums, goes too far in that direction. And now we have all this rebelling has basically led to conforming again, only conforming around socialism.
Massive conforming. Yeah. That's a tough problem.
And now monarchism. Okay. So it's funny.
Well,
it's like, this is why I don't think you can escape the pendulum, because it's always going in the opposite of one direction will end up creating the very thing it's running away from in the future.